Hello. Welcome to For the Love of Weather podcast. This weather podcast is for anyone who just loves the weather, wants to learn a little bit more about it, or just wants to join in our conversation. My name is Aisling.
Hi everyone, and my name is Gemma, and welcome to Weather Wednesday. We think this is the best day of the week because on Weather Wednesday we will be releasing a new episode of the podcast.
Hold on to your seats.
Thank you for joining us. We thought this episode would be a great chance for us to introduce ourselves and explain how we both got into meteorology. We hope you love the weather just that little bit more after listening to this episode, but also all the other episodes that we do. That's our aim, really.
100%. We just want you to love the weather a bit more. Hopefully our love of it will be a little bit infectious and you'll
definitely.
You'll just be really excited about Weather Wednesday happening. But I am actually here with Gemma because the both of us belong to the most wonderful community of weather. We live in a gigantic nation of 64 or so million people, and the weather world is actually quite small. So sort of like 2 degrees or maybe 3 degrees of freedom. Everyone seems to know somebody who knows somebody, and that's how I got to know Gemma. So I know Gemma for nearly 11 years now.
Wow, it's a long time.
Yeah, I know. Like, I thought we'd have totally grown up more by now.
Oh no, never.
But we also just wanted to tell you how we got into meteorology and actually just bring you on a little path, a little journey, a little story of how Gemma and I are sitting here today and how Gemma came up with this lovely idea to have a chat about the weather. So we are going to start with some little interesting facts about us, and I can tell you that one of Gemma's most interesting facts is, Gemma, do you want to disclose?
Oh,
that you love the weather.
I love the weather, but more importantly, I love weather factoids. Any weather fact, I am all over it. I really enjoy them. I go searching for them sometimes, just any weather fact, and then I tell everyone.
And you know, if you hang around with Gemma long enough, you sound really clever because she'll always give you a factoid and then you can just pretend like you know it. It's pretty good.
They're not all that useful all the time, but they're very interesting. I think they are anyway.
I totally agree. So Gemma, you started the weather pretty much after you came out of university, but take me back. Take me right the way back to when you were a little girl. When did weather start to tickle you, start to make you a little bit curious? Tell me about how you get into weather.
So my love of the weather started very young. I watched that classic film. It's everyone's favourite film.
Which one?
It's Twister.
Oh, Gemma.
It's an amazing film.
Cliche.
It's an amazing film. The flying cow, and I just love that film so much. I watch it every year. Honestly, I do. I really like that film. And I watched that film.
Just for the record, I'm not very good with movies like that. I'm too anxious and I'm on the edge. Oh, so I can't watch them.
I love them so much. So I watched that film and I just really intrigued about what was going on, and I really enjoyed the storm chasing side of it. And I was pretty young, actually. I think I was still in primary school when I saw that film. And I said to my mum one day, I'm going to be a meteorologist. And she said, how do you even know that word? And I was like, well...
Gemma, can you spell it? I had to learn how to spell it.
I still know. Still at times I'm like, okay, which way is the O and the R going around? And always have to double check. So then after that, I just, for every birthday and every Christmas, I would be given weather books and I would just read them all and I would devour them, and I just really enjoyed learning more and more. And then when I went to secondary school, I did geography and I really enjoyed geography. I really enjoyed the physical geography and learning about the earth and especially the weather side. And the more I did it, the more I thought, I think I could really enjoy a career in this. And then I did A-levels and I checked with someone beforehand and they said that I needed a geography and a science A-level. So I did geography, which was great. It's my favourite subject. So I was like, yeah, I'm all over this. And I did biology. Then when it came to apply for university, I realised I didn't have the right A-levels to do a meteorology degree. So I freaked out.
Right.
Massively. I was like, so all I want to do is weather. What am I going to do? So I did a physical geography degree, and then I did a master's in meteorology. And I'm really glad I did it that way, because through my degree I learned various things about processes around the earth, which I can then use in my weather life still. I use it now if I'm talking about flooding and rivers. I know about that stuff already. And ultimately I got there in the end. I mean, I'm not going to lie. We did a maths part of our masters, and it was hard. It was hard. But I got there. I got there.
Honestly, like, have you ever actually used it? Like, the pain of going through it. But I don't ever use it on a day-to-day basis.
I don't either.
My brain's all visual. I imagine things moving around. I don't imagine numbers moving around. I imagine things.
I'm the same. So, I mean, we did a foundation course in our masters that taught us about the equivalent of A-level maths. So we could do the equations. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I can't remember a lot of the A-level maths I learned. I don't use it day to day.
I don't remember any of it.
So I think if anyone out there is listening to this and is worried that they're not the greatest with maths, or they don't enjoy maths, or they don't have a maths A-level, you can still get into weather without it. I know a lot of meteorologists that don't have a maths A-level, and they're in the career, they do it. So it's fine. You don't always need to have a maths.
I know a archaeologist and an ex-air hostess who are fantastic meteorologists.
Exactly, see?
Actually. So there's lots of different ways to get into it. And also there is the commercial side of forecasting as well. There's the public weather side of forecasting. There's so many different faces of weather.
I completely agree.
Which myself and Gemma have had the luxury of doing day and night shifts forecasting for all of these wonderful things that we didn't actually know needed a forecast.
The night shifts are a joy. They really are.
Oh my goodness. I'm not going to lie. Secretly smoke. I'm not doing them anymore, Gemma. Hate to say it.
You're so lucky, Ash. I've been doing night shifts now for 13 years.
I don't know. You're a hero. You're a hero.
I mean,
I don't know.
They're definitely aging me more. I definitely feel older.
You look about 20. What are you talking about? So
after a night shift, I don't.
So, Gemma, tell me, of all the forecasting you've done, is there any forecasting left that you want to do?
Oh, I really am intrigued and really interested by hurricanes. I have had this interest in them for years and years and years. I just think they're so interesting. The way that they form, the way that they move, they're
so complicated.
They really are. And then when you just see them on a satellite, they're just massive, and they're so, I don't know what the word is. It's just, I'm so drawn towards learning more about them.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy that. And I'm really lucky because in my current job, I can do UK and world forecasting. So I can do both. So I get to do a bit of forecasting for hurricanes. But I find
that means you have to know what's happening in the weather absolutely everywhere at any one time.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to test me on what the maximum temperature is in a random place in South America, I might not know the maximum temperature, but I'll generally know what the weather's doing.
You probably have a good idea. Yeah. I get that. And also that it's a different season. That's always a good place to start as well.
Yes. And the weather fronts are always moving the other way, and winds are going. It's like completely.
Oh, that's so confusing. I actually have drawn weather fronts for aviation in the southern hemisphere.
Going the wrong way.
I did a stint down in the Falklands. Honestly, it just blew my mind. It was,
sometimes I have to sort of turn my head to the side, sort of think, okay.
I know, and sort of thinking, oh, it's a southerly wind. That's freezing.
Yeah.
The northerly wind is not as cold, but it's still cold, and this is moving that way in a warm front. Oh, it's already confusing. And then when I came home, it was even more confusing. Oh, it was just
like
really
switching it back again. Yeah. It's a little bit like when you drive on the opposite side of the road. When you then come back, you're trying to switch back again.
Kind of. Yes. It just blew my mind. Anyway, somehow I managed to get through it, but that was definitely that was a tough time. There's not as much satellite imagery down there. The winters are dark, but it's cold. It's really, really cold down there. But actually, I'm so excited I got to do it because that was something I never ever thought that I would actually get to do.
It's so amazing that you got to go somewhere completely different and forecast and experience that. It's amazing.
Yeah, slightly terrifying, mind you, but also really, really exciting.
I can imagine.
As well.
So how about you, Ash? How did you fall in love with the weather? How did you get involved in the weather?
Yeah. So the weather has always tickled me, Gemma. I've always really enjoyed it. I'm the same as well. So mine went back to like a feeling very much like yours did. Mm-hmm. From as far back as I can remember, I always remember like looking up at the sky and thinking like, why is that happening? Why is it raining? And if I saw weather forecast, I'd think, how did they know it was going to rain? How did they know it was going to be like 18 degrees today? Or how do they know? How do they know it's going to be frosty in the morning? And why isn't it frosty the next morning? So there's always just that why question. Yeah. But my route was by no means direct. I really did not get there in any direct manner. And also in Ireland, there was no meteorology course. Not gonna lie, I don't think I had the best guidance when I was in school. And I had to go at university one time. That didn't work out so well. So it took me a few years to get back to university. But I eventually made my way somehow to meteorology. And then I was so lucky. I got a job over here in the UK. And since then, I've never looked back. I've forecast and learned more than I could ever dream of. And it still just blows my mind. Yeah. There is so much more.
Always.
There's so much more. Every time you think you've got a handle on something, I know.
Something else, yeah. Or sometimes I have to make lists of things. I think, I'm going to look into that a bit more. And I'll just look into that a bit more. So I know.
And then so you kind of sometimes have to look at one thing in one way and then you're looking at the same thing in another way if you're talking about something else, like maybe global teleconnections. That's one that just blows my mind. You know, obviously we're learning more and more about them, particularly in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah.
But
and
then
how they affect different parts of the world.
How they affect things, but sometimes you have to look at them at a bigger scale and sometimes you look at them at a smaller scale, but then sometimes that doesn't really impact the day-to-day weather, but it might impact the trend of the weather.
Yes, it's learning all that extra stuff. Yeah, I'm exactly the same, yeah.
So I never, ever stopped learning. And that's a great thing, though. I've always learned from my community and also online as well. There's just such a brilliant community of people. There's always somebody interested in something. And if like you don't want to delve into something too much, somebody else will do the work for you. I love looking at anything that comes out of the Arctic, any research that comes out of there. But there's so many great people online. I can just kind of read their stuff and they sort of do the work for me and I get to enjoy it.
I'm exactly the same. I just think that there's so much information out there and you can always learn something. That's what I love about the weather. It's always changing. I mean, today's weather is completely different to yesterday's weather. I mean,
it is, yeah. Yeah, it was so cold.
I was outside walking in it and it was raining. It was completely different and it changes day to day. And obviously in the longer term as well, we know that things are changing with our climate. So there's always something to learn and to draw on. And I think that's really interesting and what continues to draw me into the weather, I think.
And equally though, on a day where you do get it right, that's fabulous. Just when you've got,
I can't tell you,
you've got it right. It's just brilliant. Yes. It just makes your day. It's like, I did that today. That's just brilliant.
My thing is when I forecast for showers and I'll forecast in a certain area and I'll be like, I think this area is where the shower's going to be. And then you look at the radar and they're there. You're like,
yeah, winning. I know.
Done it today. I've got it. Because showers are so hard to forecast. Like, I often getting them where they are and they're really tough showers. But
I know. I know. Yeah. And also, what other word is there other than scattered showers? What other word do you use? This is something I've thought about for years. What other word can you use for scattered?
I like to use a more organised area of showers.
But on a day where it actually is scattered showers, you know, there's a big
isn't a scattering. It's
like somebody throwing iron filings all over the place. Like it's like, how else do I describe this? I don't know. They're just scattered about the place.
It is tough. If you're writing forecasts as well for lots of parts of the country and the weather's the same, trying to word it in different ways, that's quite tough.
That's also challenging as well. I know. Yeah, that is definitely that's challenging too. Lots of challenges we face in this career, Gemma. Well,
easy.
Yes, and you're such a hero still doing night shifts, honestly. Anyway, I am sure that both of us at some point have actually forgot one of these steps in our journey to get here. But hopefully over the next few episodes, that might sort of slip out and fill in the blanks of how we actually got to where we are. And also, each season is different. Each half year is different. All different things happen all the time. You learn from each season. Honestly, you learn something different will happen, and then you'll take what you've learned into the next season. But then, winter's a different year to year. It's just my first year forecasting here in the UK, Gemma, was the big freeze.
Oh, that was a tough year. That was the first year I did road forecasting. It was so hard. That was it.
Whoever thought a 30 centimetre temperature would be so important in the soil.
It's cold and the snow. That was really, really tough. That was a tough year.
That was, I don't even know what happened that year. And the weather was happening. And I didn't understand the weather. I just never experienced such conditions. I was just crazy. But also, over here, particularly across the east of England, a northerly wind feels so different to a northerly wind in Ireland. I remember the first time actually there was a northeasterly wind and I was in London, and I just remember thinking, what is that?
It's so cold.
It is so cold. What is it? Like, what is the weather like over here?
I've never really thought of it like that. Cold. It must have felt really different coming over.
It was shocking. And then there was snow on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand what's happening with the weather over here. Anyway, that was a stressful year. I learned a lot, though. Anyway. I still think I've still got some trauma from that. I'll leave it for the moment.
I think we've all got some lasting trauma from that year.
It was a tough one. It definitely was a tough one. And actually, so was the following year as well. It snowed as well the following year. And now we don't know when it's going to snow because it's been so mild. It just changes all the time.
I mean, I don't mind if it snows and I'm not working.
So
I don't want it to snow when I'm working.
I don't mean to sound negative here, Gemma, but I actually don't like the snow. Now, the reason I don't like the snow... No, I don't like the snow here because we mostly get wet snow, right? And that wet snow might last for like 5 seconds, and then all you're left with is a big slushy mess. And the ground gets icy.
And then that freezes, and then you're slipping.
And it's freezing. So I'm actually not a fan of it. But maybe like if I was further north across England, I would enjoy it because I could actually, I don't know, there'd be more of it to make a snowman. But I'm not messing with it. It just messes the rails up.
I do get that. Yeah, I mean, I do like the snow. I like it when it snows and I'm not working. When I'm working, I don't want it to snow.
I know.
It makes
for so many reasons.
Shifts. The shifts are really tough when it snows.
You're going to be late getting into work.
Yeah.
You're going to have to leave silly early. Second of all, you don't want to get stranded in work. But third of all, it's really stressful. It's snowing at work.
I know. It's really hard as well when it's snowing and you can't get to work. And you're like, but I need to get to work to forecast the snow that's stopping me getting to work.
Because you're the forecaster, so you're not supposed to be late because of the snow.
I know. And you know that it's going to snow because you forecast it to snow, but then there's no train. So you're like, okay, well, how do I get to work to then forecast the snow that's now falling?
It's just boggles the mind. Dilemmas. And then also maybe it's just like a half a degree as to why it's not snowing. Like, so there's no like exact formula to how snow happens. This is why I hate wet snow. At least if it was dry snow, you know that it's going to be cold enough to actually forecast snow properly. But with wet snow, it's messy.
Yeah.
There's too much physics going on there.
It's true. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast.
It is. It's a whole other podcast. And I won't ask you, Gemma, if you think it's going to snow this Christmas. We'll leave that one for a couple more weeks.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Right. So, Gemma, to finish off this episode, I believe you have something for us called Weather Wisdom. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we thought it would be a really nice idea just to end each podcast with a weather wisdom, and that could be a weather word that we really love. I mean, I know I've got certain weather words that I love and I'd love to share with people. It could be a myth, a weather myth that we want to bust or prove.
A weather saying?
A saying. It could be just... If it's coming from me, it's probably going to be a factoid. It could just be a really interesting weather factoid that I have come across. And I just want to share because I love to share. I mean, I love to share things about the weather. I mean, I think my family and friends are pretty happy that I'm doing this podcast now, so they don't have to listen to me talk about the weather as much. There's other
So they
people
could just
that
say,
can listen
Gemma,
to me.
yeah, I'll tune in and yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll listen to your
At least
podcast.
they listen to you. My family's favourite phrase is, they said on the telly, the weather's going to be wet. And I'm like, hello. Hello.
I mean, we're
could
detouring
give you a
here,
weather
but
forecast if you want one. Kind of, meteorologists over here, but hey ho.
my family have been known to say, "Oh, I just don't trust weather forecasters," and I'm like,
I
but
know.
I'm the
They
one
always
giving
get
you
it
the
wrong.
forecast. I'm telling you that
I
there's going to
know.
be strong winds. Oh, they just always get it wrong. I don't
Or
believe them.
also, when somebody asks some advice from me, so if they say, look, I'm traveling here, I'm traveling there, particularly if it's closer to the time, my advice is normally pretty good. So maybe if there was, like, for example, a snow event, I could probably give them a really good idea, especially if it's within like 12 hours,
Yeah.
of what's actually going to happen when you're at that critical point of view. And they still don't listen anyway. So,
I know.
I don't know.
Well, hopefully there'll be people listening to this podcast that will listen to us.
Whether they learn something or not is another thing.
That is true. I mean, we might just ramble on about random things about the weather, but I mean, we are talking about things that we really enjoy and we love it, and we do really love the weather. So back to the weather wisdom. You'll find this a lot with me and Ash, is that we do tend to go off on tangents, but we'll come back in the end. So weather wisdom, we're bringing it back to weather wisdom.
Weather wisdom, yes.
We're just gonna just give each listener just something that they can then take away with them, and if they want to share with people, or if you're out with a friend, you can have this random fact that you can just slip into conversation. So
if you're cool like us,
oh, we are so cool. Never that's never in doubt, Ash. We are super cool. So this week's weather wisdom, I'm going to hand it back to Ash, but she is going to explain whether the saying "red sky at night, shepherd's delight" is actually true or not.
Gemma, yes, it is. Most of the time. So, like many things in weather, any of these sayings normally comes from it mostly being correct most of the time. But I'm going to explain that particular saying here in the UK. So, there's a couple of things that we need to think about. First of all, on average, and that's kind of how you look at weather if you're explaining these sayings. On average, our weather systems move from west to east. I do know the pain of them moving from east to west. It's very confusing, and the weather never does what it's supposed to do, and it's probably snow if it is happening, and if it's in the summer, it's probably a heat wave. But anyway, most of our weather systems move from west to east, and it probably takes, on average, about 12 hours or so for a whole weather system to move through. And I'm just talking about your average standard weather system. Another thing to consider is if I'm standing in the one spot, weather fronts generally tend to look the same. You'll see some high cloud coming in, some low cloud coming in, and the cloud continues to lower, and then eventually it rains and it clears away the same way. So it sort of looks like a little wedge. Now that's if I'm standing at the one point. So as the weather front is approaching, I'll see some high cloud. Eventually I'll be standing in rain. And then if I look away as it's moving away to the east, I'll see some high cloud as it's leaving. And then there's another fact. So the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Now, when the sun is low on the horizon, the light gets scattered differently, and it's normally the cloud that picks up the different scattering of light. And when it's low in the sky, we normally get red light scattered to us. So I think we're all familiar with like a burning sunrise or a burning sunset. So if in the morning the sun is rising in the east and it's illuminating the red cloud in the sky, that means the weather front is approaching from the west, which means red sky in the morning is the shepherd's warning, because that weather front is going to approach from the west, thicken, lower, you get the cloud, and as it moves away. In the evening time, as the sun is setting in the west, if you're illuminating the high cloud, it means that the weather front has already passed through. So there is actually some truth to it. But like all things, that's always on average. There's always a reason why that's not correct. But most of the time, it's a pretty good guess as to what your weather might entail for the day. Probably wouldn't tell you like how much rainfall you're going to get, but it would definitely tell you the progress of the weather through the day.
Thanks for that, Ash. That was a really nice
Did you get
information.
that?
I like that. It was lovely. Thank you. Well, we hope
that explanation smaller.
We hope the listeners enjoyed that as well. And we just want to thank everyone for joining us today on Weather Wednesday.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us for our first episode of For the Love of Weather podcast. We have enjoyed our weather chat today. We hope you've enjoyed it too. And we really hope that you leave this episode loving the weather just that little bit more.
Yeah, we really do. And thank you very much if you have listened to us today. And we do hope that you will come back again in 2 weeks' time for our Weather Wednesday for our next podcast. And on that, Gemma, I'm going to say goodbye to you now.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.